Hey, what's your name?
Hi, my name is Cameron.
So, say
Sorry,
again?
my name is Cameron.
Cameron, go ahead.
Nice to meet you.
You too.
Before I started my question, I guess I kind of wanted to ask another question just to
Oh,
ensure I'm not putting words in your mouth or something.
uh-huh.
Do you believe that suffering is a direct consequence of humans having free will?
Well, it started with Satan, actually. But yeah, suffering has been introduced through free choice.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so you said something that I guess I found interesting with the first gentleman who asked the question. You said that God did not have to create us,
Mm-mm.
but he chose to out of love, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess to me, I'm thinking, obviously, there's the argument from like, oh, he creates people that he knows later on are going to sin or do things. But that's not my problem. My problem is, I have a lot of, cousins, who are born with things like Duke syndrome with, all these disabilities that were debilitating that pretty much, like some of them were basically rendered like vegetables, right? Who knew nothing but pain and, things like that. And I'm like, if he created them out of love, I don't see where the love is in creating beings, creating circumstances where living beings only exist to suffer.
So before Frank answers that, I kind of want to react to that particular statement that he made, where this gentleman here is basically saying, if God is so loving, why would He allow humans to be created this way? The fact of the matter is that, we are all created, but the fact that we have free will, and I've said this before in a few of my videos, is that when we are gifted, for lack of better wording, with free will, there are consequences, right? So if by any chance a human being is born with some type of defect or disease or things like that, it can be because someone else's decision and actions a long, long time ago, whether that's through the pharmaceutical companies. It all boils down to there's always a reasoning. If you really track it back and you go from the beginning, there's always a reason why someone has something or is born with something. Um, so, unfortunately, when it comes to free will, yes, it's a wonderful thing, but you have to understand that ultimately it has consequences. So, it all comes down to actions and habits of prior individuals.
Okay. We don't always know why God does certain things, but let me give you an illustration from my grandmother, who the last 4 or 5 years of her life, she was basically bedridden. And the youngest of her 5 kids, my aunt, wasn't really very mature. But she took care of her mom every day for 4 years. And it helped grow her into a mature adult. We don't always see how suffering can bring forth good, but sometimes it can. And just because we can't see sometimes how suffering can bring forth good doesn't mean it won't. Have you ever heard of the ripple effect?
Yes.
Okay, so the ripple effect says that every event that occurs ripples forward to affect billions, maybe even trillions of other events.
Agreed.
And for us to say that this particular event I see no good in makes no sense because we know virtually nothing of the past, very little of the present, we know nothing of the future. And for us to say that this event can't bring forth good in the future is not a wise conclusion because we don't have enough information.
Yeah.
So God may allow suffering to bring forth the greater good, and the scriptures talk about this in many places, even when we can't see how that greater good is coming forth.
You debated Alex O'Connor. I
Mm-hmm.
remember. I don't remember exactly when. There was a point. I guess I don't think he brought up with you, although I could be.
Listen, it's only a matter of time before Alex converts to Christianity. He tries so hard to debunk it. I'm telling you, it's only a matter of time.
Misremembering. There was something he said about how it's not necessarily just humans like that, right? Obviously, humans can get brought closer to God, but he made references to things like a branch falling on a deer and just leaving it crippled,
Mm-hmm.
helpless,
Mm-hmm.
nothing to do. And I don't think the deer is going to benefit from that in any way. A lot of nature, I guess, is very cruel. I mean, you believe in evolution, correct? Just that it was God kind of orchestrating it.
No.
You don't believe in evolution and
I believe in microevolution. I think there's evidence against macroevolution.
okay, but you still believe that it's like a kill or be killed world, right? Like the obviously if a creature dies, it does not procreate, it does not go on to go again, right? So I look at a world like that, and I'm thinking, if you were to take me outside of this universe, right, and you were to tell me I'm going to place you into a universe that was designed by an all-powerful, all-loving, and God, right, who could do anything and who knew everything, I would think, okay, this is going to be a paradise, right? Things are not going to get killed senselessly. Things are going to be prosperous. And then I get here and you drop me in the middle of a forest. Let's say, I random chance on what species I am, right? I get dropped off, as a chicken in a factory farm, and that's not a great place to be, in a place that was designed by an all-powerful, all-loving God. I get dropped off, as a deer, running away from a gazelle.
Hang on a sec, Cameron. I see where you're going here, but the Bible does not say that this world is going to be without pain and suffering. In fact,
Correct. I mean, if anything, I mean, the whole point that he's trying to let us know is that this pain and suffering is only temporary, as long as you decide to follow, Jesus Christ. If you make that decision, then this time that we have here on earth it's going to be irrelevant, because the amount of joy and happiness that you're going to experience in heaven is going to be tenfold. This is nothing. So we have to, live life in a certain manner, but also understand that this is such a small amount of our life, because heaven is going to be eternal. So yeah, we are going to go through suffering from here, but guess what? It's going to be a completely different story once we make it to heaven.
in fact, almost every book of the New Testament talks about pain and suffering. It's not promising a painless world until we get to the other side. So if you're going to say that this world can't exist, the one we experience now, that's exactly the world the Bible says does exist. But there's a way out of it, and Jesus provides the way out.
I guess, why is the world here necessary then? If everyone's going to end up in heaven or hell regardless, I don't know why the kind of middleman Earth universe thing is.
Because it gives us an ability to make a free choice, to decide whether or not we're going to follow God or not. Adam and Eve had a choice, and they decided to rebel against God, and they're our federal head. So we're in a situation where we are now in a fallen world, in a fallen state, and we're given a choice to either follow God or not. And it's up to us whether we do that, because God is not going to force himself on us.
So regarding, let's say, an infant, right, that was born and has a terrible condition, and like I have my cousin Connor, he lived to be about a day old, his heart just gave out. It was terrible. It was traumatic. Do you believe that he went to heaven?
Well, I do, because I think that's what the Old Testament teaches with regard to David's son. David said, I will go to him, he won't come to me. But whatever God does, he's going to be just, because he's the standard of justice. Okay, but we can't keep going on. We got a line here, but let me just say this, Cameron. These are all good questions, but they all presuppose a standard that only exists objectively if God exists. And what you can say, and what Matt could say earlier, is that I believe in God, I just don't think the God of the Bible is the true God. That's a fair position to take. The problem is, then you have to deal with the evidence that Jesus died and rose from the dead. And I think there's very good evidence that Jesus did die and rise from the dead. And therefore, then, the Christian God is the true God. As I said earlier, a bunch of free will creatures, billions of them running around, is going to create a messy world. And so things aren't going to always go the way we want them to go. But God has promised that those who follow him will one day have all this evil work together for good. So that's the promise that we have.
Okay.
And he himself submitted himself to this fallen world full of pain and suffering for our own benefit. All right?
Well, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Cameron. Thank you so much.
So I think Frank did an excellent job answering that question. And again, it all comes down to free will. Would you guys rather live in a world where we are robots and our future is already determined regardless, and we have no choice whatsoever. I don't know about you, but no, not me. I definitely want the ability to choose, because at the end of the day, it's gonna be my actions that are gonna get me to my final destination. And with that being said, there are consequences for good behavior, and there are also consequences for bad behavior. At the end of the day, we know that wherever we decide, well, wherever we're gonna end up, it's gonna be eternal. So, do you really want to live this short amount of time here on earth not following the one and only Jesus Christ? I don't know about you, but I don't. I definitely want to follow him. I don't want to waste my time here on earth and then pay for it later on an eternal basis. But with that being said, let me know what you guys think down below. Always a pleasure. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time.